More on the knot. Hey, welcome to another edition of the Ripple of, that's my
More
podcast. Welcome to Conversations with Asha and Steve. We're already off to a precarious start. I am your host, Steve Harper, and with me is my co-host, Dr. Asha Prasad. This is the Conversation with Asha and Steve podcast, now live stream, our first live stream of the year. How's it going, Asha? It's good to see you.
Going, Steve. I mean, 2021, here we are.
Yeah, we touched on this. We've actually recorded. Is this our third recording for January? I think it is, right?
I think it's third. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So we did the other two as audio because we had some travel restrictions and challenges that we were working through and dealing with, and so this is our first live stream. And I think we touched on it maybe in the last episode about this just seems like a continuation of 2020, even though a whole lot of new stuff is happening. New president got sworn in this week. We've had, the vaccine is being rolled out slowly here in the US and over in the Netherlands. But it seems like a continuation of where we ended 2020, right?
It really is. I still find myself writing 2020. I still find myself typing. It's so weird because we've just continued. Literally, it feels like everything has continued, and some things have gotten a little bit more like, okay, here we go again. Like, here's another, kind of uphill kind of thing, especially with the numbers going on now. So it's just like, oh, okay, well, we're going to have that now. Fun.
Yeah. And for those that are watching on YouTube and Facebook, we've got a little bit of a connection delay. The Netherlands, there's a lot of people, they're on lockdown again. So there's a lot of people at home. The internet is a little bit challenged right now. Yes. So bear with us. We're working through those. I mean, I wish we had a magic wand. We just fix all this, but
I know
can't do it. But anyway, we, you're right. It does seem like a continuation of 2020, which is a little bit weird. I've actually talked to a number of people. I've had some clients on my software company, as well as some of my coaching clients that I've been working with. And it's kind of interesting because people seem to be in this long, elongated hangover, right, from 2020 and everything that's going on. And I don't know what people thought that the minute the clock struck midnight that all of a sudden all that ails us was going to be corrected, but it hasn't worked out that way.
No, and you know what, Steve? I think we tend to feel at the end of the year. There's something exciting about the end of the year. It's like we're wrapping up the year, and then when we're getting into a new year, there's something that's just like so refreshing about it. It's just like, oh my God, I get to start new goals, new ideas and everything. And I think because of the fact that we are used to that, we all thought that it would kind of be that way. And especially because the vaccinations came out as well.
Yeah.
We thought, okay, that's it. You know what? Get everybody vaccinated. We'll be fine. And here we are. First of all, there's understandable. I mean, that's just one of those things in all the different countries. But yeah, it doesn't really provide like a very, I mean, we have to work on it, right? For it to keep us motivated and keep us inspired, because otherwise you can really, really start to fall kind of like in this, this hole in a way, this whole discouragement. But there's so many great things happening in the world at the same time.
Sure.
And we tend to kind of like focus on, like, for example, it's not possible. And I don't know, we just have to turn it around somehow, because otherwise, I don't know, because it doesn't look like there's an end in sight. I mean, maybe you see the end in sight. Tell me what you see in your crystal ball, Steve.
I don't. I'm not sure when this crazy nightmare is going to end, or when life will return back to normal, if it will ever return back to normal. But there again, we've talked about it a number of times on this podcast, that there are things that are in our control and things that are out of our control, and there's only certain elements that that you've got direct control over. And I guess rather than look at the downside of it, I guess one of the things that I would ask you is what's one of the things that you're most excited about in 2021? I know you have a book that's going to be coming out. No pressure. You're on deadline,
Yeah,
but
well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Steve, because let me tell you something. I'm shifting gears with that. I
oh,
just spoke
really?
with our mutual editor a couple weeks ago,
That slave
and
driver
yeah,
who's probably on here right now, like smiling because he's
he's
like,
nice to me.
oh, sure, talk about me. We won't say him by name, Mark Schwartz. Anyway,
But anyway, no, but you know what? I'm actually shifting gears because of all the things that are going on. Actually, it's been very interesting because we kind of hit like a kind of a wall with some things, and it's like what? And you know me, Steve. It's like for me, if I'm meeting something with a lot of resistance, or
yep.
like I'm really having to try really hard to like for something, then I know for a fact, like, okay, there's something else here. There's another way around this, or I'm just putting my energy into something that is not what it needs to be.
So
So
are
yeah.
you pausing on it, or what are you doing?
No, shifting,
Oh,
literally shifting the direction of it.
so
You
like
know, Mark is
different
loving that,
topic,
right?
or I mean,
I'm sorry.
is
What'd you
it a
say?
different topic, or you're shifting the direction of the book, or
It's not totally different topic, but the of communicating it is different.
gotcha?
Um, Yeah, it's really interesting because I did not expect that to happen, but we just kind of went with it. And that's one thing I have to say I appreciate about Mark, because I know he has challenges working with me. I'm sure because I am so like go with the flow kind of person, and like, okay, I got to feel what is right to do, and you know how he is, Steve. Like
Oh yeah,
he
yeah,
doesn't really love that very much, but he's so gracious with me and so patient, which of that I am looking forward to what that's going to be about, how that's going to come about.
yeah.
But generally, I'm really excited about new changes that are going to happen. I feel like there's going to be new changes with every level, not only on an individual level and with my own companies and all that kind of stuff, but also in our communities and in our countries, our governments and everything. I'm excited about some new changes, some new energy, some newness, and to bring more about be more innovative. And for some reason, I feel like we're embarking on a new path in some way. I don't know how you feel, Steve. I'm not sure what your take is on 2021. I mean, how are you feeling about things?
I'm remarkably positive about it. I mean, I've had a number of things that I have that I look at to be grateful for,
Mhm.
and whether it's business wise or personal wise. I've been very lucky in a number of ways that the pandemic has not impacted me nearly as bad as it has for some, including yourself, right? We're very lucky in
Right.
that regard. But I too am looking at it as an opportunity to sort of reinvigorate what I'm focused on and really what I want to accomplish
Mhm.
this year. And it's really interesting because I've had a number of conversations since our last conversation. People seem really unsure and uncertain, whether it's the change in the political environment over here, or what's going to go on long term relative to the pandemic, or what else is coming down the pipe, that we don't expect or anticipate. And there's a lot of
Mhm.
hesitancy to make any substantial changes, or really embrace
Yep.
the possibility of change. And people really, there seems to be an attitude of people being kind of stuck in neutral right now. And that concerns me a
Mhm.
little bit, because I think that when you are feeling like you're stuck in that position, nothing good comes of that, right? Nothing substantial.
Right.
You have to make your own luck. You have to make your own things happen. And I think if you're already acknowledging like, oh, well, I guess 2021 is going to be a write-off, that concerns me, because I don't think it has to be. I think this is an opportunity, and like you said, an opportunity to embrace some change. It's an opportunity to take a look at everything with fresh set of eyes, not because it's the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
but because I think what we've just come through, 9, 10 months of this craziness with the pandemic,
Yeah.
we can now have a level reset and say, look, maybe things aren't going to go the way we expected them to. And so what
Right.
am I going to do differently, professionally,
Right.
personally? How am I going to maximize my time? What am I going to go learn? What am I going to go experience? how can I do it? Maybe if I can't do it with the same friends or social groups or business, approach that I've had in the past, okay, maybe I have to adhere to that, but what do I do, to not just, feel like I've got to go retreat into the bubble? I call it the turtle syndrome. How do you stick your head back in the
Yeah.
shell and come back and hope things change differently when you pop out? And you can't do that. And so for me, it's like, okay, I got invigorated by writing, the third edition of my book last year. That's got me focused on some writing projects. I want to do more stuff with the podcast, with this podcast, with my own podcast.
Right.
Working on some additional content for my website and some new programs. I decided that 2021 was not going to be the year that I let the grass grow under my feet, regardless of whether I can be in the same park as you or not. Right. So
Exactly.
Hey, that's my call and my commitment.
Yeah. But you know what? I think that that's important. I mean, there's one thing, Steve, about reflect upon, okay, kind of assessing what's going on, what's changing. And then there's a point between that reflection time of kind of like doing nothing in a way and getting into action and taking small steps. It doesn't matter how small the steps are, but as long as you're taking steps. And you may not have any clarity. I mean, some of the listeners there that are listening today or will listen, maybe if you're listening, you don't have clarity, that's okay as well. It's by getting into some sort of action that you will start, it'll start to unfold to you. It'll pass. And if you are having difficulty with that, I mean, I highly recommend that you engage working with a mentor or with a coach on that, because that is something that I think really helps to be able to speak to somebody to help guide you, because this uncertainty is an uncertainty to a new level. We have not had to deal with that in our lifetime, not to this level. Yeah. And I mean, I'm seeing clients that are changing careers, that are moving countries, that are, in the middle of this pandemic. And it's like, okay, there's a reason. Light bulb is going off and going, wait a second, what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to do with my time? How do I want to spend my time? So I think that's important.
I do too. I think it's, you get there, you have to ask those more meaningful questions, right? You have to challenge yourself to, step up to the plate to do things a little bit differently, or at least consider doing those things a little bit differently. I have a good friend that has made a very similar, kind of approach to what you said. They're not changing countries, but they're changing entire career paths.
Wow.
They spent the last 9 months getting interested in things, or I wouldn't say they were already interested, but they turned something from a side hobby, side interest into something that they decided that they would really dive in and utilize that time to get experience in. And that has led them through, we talked probably somewhere in the August, September timeframe, when everybody assumed things were going to get better in the fall. And she was like, well, this has been a great, distraction for what I've been dealing with. Right. She had more time on her hands than she expected, because working from home, she was able to get her job done, was more efficient. So she started dabbling a bit more in this one particular area. And I started challenging her to find some people that are in that area, in that space, ask them why they're, how they got, focused on that, how they actually made it a business and became more successful at, making that part of their day-to-day, and she was really enamored with the direction that some of these companies, some of these individuals that were building companies were headed. And I said, why don't you start asking some questions? People are more than likely going to be responding now because of the pandemic, because they have more time on their hands. So they're open to asking, how'd you get into this? What do you like about it? Was it what you thought it was going to be when you started? Right. And how is that? Is there a possibility I could do something different, with this? It's something I have interest in. And you know what? She had some amazing conversations. She ended up talking to people that decided that they were going to take a special interest in what she wanted to do and mentor her. And one of those ended up materializing in a job offer to join a company rather than start something. Bring your brilliance to the table for my company. And so that was pretty interesting to see that. Yeah. But all of those things, I think, were because she was finally embracing the the possibilities of something different. And I think that that's kind of key for a lot of people.
I think that is key. And you know what? One of the things that I always say is that whatever you can spend your time and you can lose track of time with, there is something there. There is something about that
Yeah.
that is, it's not just what you love to do. It's what you're
Yep.
here to do and to contribute, and pay attention to that. And I think because more people have had more time on their hands to kind of dabble into those things, they're starting to realize, like, wait a second, I really love this. But we are not traditionally brought up to think that our job is supposed to be fun or our career is supposed to bring us joy, which is something that I deal with and talk to a lot of my clients about like, oh, wait a minute, I can be joyful. I can actually enjoy myself. It's like, yes, that's the whole point. That's the
Yeah.
whole point, is to enjoy
Yeah. It's
ourselves and to be at your level.
tough. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I think a lot of people, you locked up a little bit there, but I mean, I think the fact that you're talking about that joy, pursuing something that really floats your boat, I think is really key and critical, because I
yeah,
think that if you're not doing that, what are you doing it for? Then you're
right.
just doing it to serve the almighty dollar, and that's not, that might get you material things, might bring you a little bit of momentary happiness, but it doesn't sustain, right?
No,
There's no joy, like you said, in getting up and getting out of bed in the morning, whether you're getting to go to your office or whether you're just going downstairs to to your home office, right? That those things, I think, can be very, very, very tough. Robert Simmons actually just joined us. I'm going to pop his thing on here, but he's a perfect example. Robert is somebody that I met many, many years ago. Phenomenally intelligent, bright guy. Was a business owner, but in a business that ultimately, probably something he could have done for the rest of his life, right? And
right.
he's really good with people. He got an opportunity to see a variety of individuals. He and I kind of crossed paths at a very unusual time, because I was starting my small consulting practice, and I was utilizing one of his services at the time. But you could just tell he wasn't doing the job that he was most suited for. And so
Mm-hmm.
he's been building for the last several years to build something that he can get up and enjoy every single day. And you can see it on his Facebook all the time. If you follow Robert on Facebook, you'll see
Uh-huh.
what he does. I won't give it away, but he is a guy that followed his passion, and he's turning it into a very successful business, even in a time period where there's a lot of people that are struggling to figure that out. He decided he was going to take the literal bull by the horns and go after it, and he's making huge strides. So he's like kind
That's
of a
awesome.
hero of mine.
No, but that's awesome. You know what? There's nothing more inspiring or motivating to see someone doing what they love.
Yeah,
I have to tell you, it's so contagious too. You can just feel it. You see it on them. You feel it in everything that they do. And I mean, you know what? Our time goes by so fast. Why not enjoy what you're doing?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Like, I don't know, obligations, whatever. I'm not going to say that you can just do it, from today to tomorrow, but it'll keep you very motivated and inspired whenever you have that vision and you start fulfilling that purpose. So that's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Well, and I think a lot of people don't, they buy into the fact that you can't really find work that you love. I think you and I are perfect examples of that. We actually get to dabble in a couple of different things. We get to do a couple of different businesses. We get to have our hands in multiple pies, which is really enjoyable. And the thing that
Yeah.
I have truly enjoyed the most out of this experience is that I get to drive my direction as an entrepreneur the way I want it. It's not being driven by somebody else, right? It's
Yeah.
mine. I control it. I get to determine how I'm going to spend my time and invest my effort.
Yeah.
And I've also recognized, after, really coming to some realization within my own, life, that life is too short to be doing it for somebody else's, motivations. You got to be doing it
Yeah.
for your own.
Yeah.
Hey,
I
we
mean,
have
at the end of the day with that,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, no, it's okay. No, I was going to say, at the end of the day, you end up feeling much more fulfilled whenever you can be the creator, like you tap into your creativity. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
see, okay, Kimberly Ann just said that.
Yep. Kimberly McKay is a world-renowned author and a friend of mine. I recently just appeared on her podcast. You two would love one another. I should connect you guys for sure, but she is a perfect example of that. She does not let the grass grow under her feet. She's written a number of books. She just recently had another book that came out. You can find her under Kimberly McKay Author. You will love her books. Very, very committed to what she's doing, but she's a perfect example of what she says right there. Staying creative is key to loving what you do. And I think creativity is one of those things that doesn't get enough attention by a lot of people, because that's what really fosters that, that internal drive to go learn a new skill, create something that is yours, write, produce your, a video, or there's so many different, you asked earlier, what am I excited about with 2021 is all the technological advances that are coming out that have enabled us to do some stuff that we never 10 years ago would never thought possible. But now you've got people, I won't say our age, because you're way younger than me, but people old like me that can get on TikTok and do a dance video with their kids, or people that are podcasting like we are. We're coming to you live through the beauty of technology from different parts of the world right now to have this conversation.
Yeah, no, it's true. Steve, I think we're going to see like a huge bump in that over the next 5 to 10 years. Like, we're going to be going way beyond what we ever imagined would be possible, which is pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting.
I agree. And, I think it's one of those things that, when you look at 2021, what do you want to learn? What do you want to experience, and what do you want to do? Now, aside from the fact that you have certain limitations put on you because of the pandemic, doesn't necessarily mean that you can't continue to experience those things. Like, if you really want to travel, maybe this isn't the year that you get to travel, but this is the year that you get to invest on where to travel, how to invest that time when you do get to move, to wherever you're going to go, not move, but travel to wherever you're going to go. If you're looking to, change your career path, you want to learn a set of skills, now's the time to do it. The nice thing about the library is open all the time. There are books on almost every topic that you could possibly imagine. And Amazon will drop ship you whatever book you want to buy in a day or less, right? So there's no excuse to use the time for anything other than to better yourself in some capacity. And that can be just a personal hobby, or it could be a career path.
Yeah, that's true. You know what? Utilize this time for what it is. We're with the lockdowns and stuff. I don't know. It's one of those things. It's one of those that you can look at it at all the things that you can't do, but you looking at what is possible and what you can do is really, it's a real game changer of how you can operate in life.
Yep.
Really is. Yeah.
Hey, so if you're just joining us, this is our live stream for Conversations with Asha and Steve. It's our podcast that we normally do. This is our first live stream of the year. Asha is over in the Netherlands, where we're experiencing a little bit of extra bandwidth consumption, not because of this show, but because of everybody being on lockdown over there. So that's why we're locking up a little bit. There's a little bit of dither, but we've gotten some great still shots of you, Asha. During these screen locks, be like, anyway, I just want to explain, because we normally don't run into this kind of bandwidth problem, but that's part of the reason why. But Kimberly actually just said, how do you spin a negative into a positive? It's a great way to approach life. That is a great way to, that is a great way to approach life. I have multi-cameras here, so I have to look around just to see what I'm reading. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's a question or more of a statement, but I think, it is, how do you, I think, Kimberly, from my perspective, and Asha probably has a similar attitude about this, is with every negative, there is a positive, right? There's every, there is always the possibility of looking at things, from a different perspective. I was talking to a coaching client this past week that was really hoping to get a pretty major deal, and it actually did not close, and they were pretty upset about it, because it was a one that they were, certainly counting on the revenue, and were hopeful that it was going to come to fruition, because it might change the dynamic for the business for the upcoming year. And there's always that old adage that, perhaps the things don't fall your way because, somebody, God, the universe, whatever you believe in, is actually protecting you from something else. Turned out that one of the things that they ended up learning about the customer that they would have landed was there were a whole set of expectations that got put on the table after the fact that her competitor ends up having to deal with, and she doesn't. She would have
Right.
burned a lot of time, a lot of resources, and probably ended up spending a lot of unnecessary dollars to chase the expectation because this particular client was going to be a huge attention suck. So sometimes, there's always
Right.
ways that you can look at the negative outcome and find some sort of positive thread potentially.
Definitely. You know what, Steve? And you know this about me. I'm a firm believer. Everything happens for a reason,
Yeah.
even if we can't see it at that moment. So I'm always looking at, even in the most, the biggest disappointments, the largest, I'm just like, oh my God, I put so much heart and soul in it. Why didn't it work out? Always trying to look at the positive, looking at, okay, what have I learned? What have I, what can I take from this experience? Maybe it saved me from, like what you were talking about with the example. Maybe it saved me time, energy, financial investment, whatever it is. There's got to be a reason. And even if it doesn't work out right now, maybe down the road it'll work out. Collaborations can happen down the road. So whenever you practice that and implement that in almost just your default, your way of dealing with things, and it'll help you spin things that we normally would label as negative into the positive, so that way we can get the benefits sooner of the lesson, and be able to let it go, so that way it doesn't block us from moving forward. Because I've seen people stay there for a
Yeah.
while too,
Oh yeah. Well, one of the things I always tell startup entrepreneurs is that, always start with the end in mind, but also
Mhm.
start with where the end isn't what you had in mind. And looking at both paths, because number one, I
Exactly.
think a lot of
True.
times when things happen, sometimes when we're just so myopic about this is the end result and it's going to be successful or else, we don't actually allow ourselves to consider the possibility that we may be chasing down a particular path or direction that it really wasn't intended for us, right? Nobody wants to consider the
Exactly.
possibility of a negative outcome, but they always want to focus on the positive. But I think as kind of a good, I would say a good way to look at everything is considering all possibilities, right? What happens if it's super successful? What happens if it's, moderately successful, or whatever happens if it's a potentially abject failure? And then what do I know? When will I know when it's time to stop? Or when will I know that it's
Yeah.
time to push back and say, look, maybe we need to pivot? Now, if you think about a lot of technology that was built, a lot of technology that goes into this broadcast today came because there was actually a failure from an original idea.
Yep.
And somebody had the forethought to be able to stop and say, look, this may not be the way that we thought it was going to be, but what can we learn from this? What can we do to pivot, or, maybe potentially take the idea down a different path? You think about how Airbnb kind of started, how, 3M Post-it notes were an example of failure, right?
Yes.
Ethernet cable that goes into the back of our networks for keeping all of the infrastructure that's happening. That was thought of from a completely different perspective and in reasoning for it. And sometimes those negative failures potentially are actually a future success in some other capacity. And so when you're starting with something, I think it's always good to consider all the various outcomes and also put some checks and balances in place so that before you run too far off the path or you go too far down the rabbit hole chasing the one idea that you absolutely had to have, that you actually have the ability to pull that ripcord a little bit and ease back into maybe something else.
Yeah, I think that's where, being too rigid. Uh-oh, Mark joined us. Uh-oh, I'm
I
nervous.
don't know when
I
he
don't know how
joined us.
long he's
Hopefully, he
there.
didn't hear us talking bad about him earlier. He looks quite ominous in that
I
mask. He
know.
does not look happy. He looks like Bane against Batman.
Yeah, he does. He does. But yeah, it is definitely, it's definitely one of those things that I think, being flexible and not being too rigid, being more fluid in the way that we go after things, having the focus and having that laser focus is great, but also being open to the possibilities. Because a lot of times, I mean, Steve, how many times that, and we were just talking about this, and it's funny that Mark's on now with the new book, changing things up now and we weren't too rigid about it. We needed to be flexible. And thank goodness we were, because it's going to help, develop into something else. So I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Well, it looks like he has a question for us. Do you want to address that, since you're the one on deadline with him? He's probably.
Oh God. Cause for changing your lives and careers. Oh God. I have to say, hands down, negative experiences.
Really? I like that.
What's been a catalyst for changing your lives and careers, positive or negative experience. I have to say, what I would consider negative experiences from the get-go, eventually I got to see over time, through the pain, frustration, or whatever it was, what was actually positive for me, and for me to be able to really change and transform some things. How about you, Steve? Positive or negative?
I would say it's actually, I would have to say both, really. I mean, I've had, both, and I know that's a cop out, but I could give you countless examples of things that went really positive and things that went really negative, and how I learned from both. The one thing I sense that a lot of times people run into is that they don't really stop to embrace the positive, right? They don't look at that, sort of that catalyst for change, because they don't recognize the good things when they're happening in the moment. We always recognize the bad things when they're happening. Right. It's like, it's bad, right? So I don't know how I originally arrived at this thought. I think it was a coach that I was working with in my 30s that told me to look at both, because there's always two sides to every coin, to every situation, and that you have to celebrate your wins even more so, because otherwise they just become expected. And that always kind of stuck with me, because it's true, right? When things are going good, we have a tendency to want more, 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 not think about the positive outcome of that meeting or that connection or getting funding for your business or whatever that situation might be, or getting that book out. We don't think about how to utilize that to continue to evolve and utilize that as our catalyst for change for the better, right? And then the flip side on the negative, you have a tendency to have the doom and gloom tendencies that, oh my God, I'm a failure. The idea didn't work, that kind of thing. Or, as opposed to saying, okay, well, now I know what doesn't work, and now I want to try something a little bit differently. Or, like heading down the 3M pathway. Hey, look, this thing actually works on a note. This is kind of cool. Let me stick it on. I mean, I personally think I keep 3M in business because of my Post-it note consumption. But, I mean, I think they're both, and I think I think it's good to have a balance between the two.
Yeah,
absolutely. But yeah, Mark, that was a great question. Kimberly just put in a comment. I'm gonna let looking back, give us an example that put you where you are today. Ooh, you first.
Thanks, Steve. I'm like, ooh, that's a good one. Gosh. Well, you know what? I can say, for example, I mean, I would probably say one of the biggest things that happened, personal losses of loved ones, like a lot of them in a very short time, about a little over a decade ago now. And that was an example of, for me, that really propelled me. Talk about a huge catalyst. And that's why my answer to the previous question was that negative experiences, because at the time it was very negative, very hard, very emotional. But what happened was, in that moment, I chose to take those experiences and be like, okay, now I'm going to go after my dreams. I wanted to travel. I wanted to do all those things. And that was really something that propelled me to put me exactly where I am today. So
great.
Yeah. So how about you, Steve? What's a good example of where you are today?
Well, I would say on a broader scope, there are a couple of things that happened that really drove me towards being an entrepreneur, but I actually had a boss that was very, let's just say, unkind to employees and unkind to anybody that was there actually positioned to help him be successful. It irritated and annoyed me at a very young age to see someone that was building a pretty successful business on the backs of the people that are building it for him couldn't be appreciative or couldn't acknowledge the fact that, he was not the star. It was the team that was the star. And
Right.
in fact, I just was sharing a similar concept with one of my coaching clients this morning about this, about the fact that, that you have leaders that are all about ego and success and organization. I've had a business partnership that failed because the guy that I was in partnership with didn't, he wanted all the credit, even though he wasn't the guy coming up with the great ideas or the good strategy or whatever. And those are never a good sign. It's the,
Right.
unfortunate situation. But when I saw that boss, how he responded and reacted, and when I saw how, the lack of graciousness when he would get new customers, and the combined factor was, I don't know if I could be more successful than he could be, but I do know that I could do things a lot better. And at the end of the day, I think people are going to respect and admire me because of how I treat them, more so than just anything to do with, the business elements. Have I always been that way as a leader? Humbly, I will say, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've screwed up with a lot of business relationships along the way, but I've learned from every one of those situations. And I used that as my litmus test. And it was really a defining component of helping me figure out where I am today, which is, and I'm very, grateful to say that I've got an excellent team. I've got great people doing what they're doing. I've put the trust in. I continue to value their contributions to whatever we're focused on, because of that example I learned way back when, right? And so
Yeah.
it's that's a big factor for me, and why I wanted to be an entrepreneur, because there's a lot of bad business owners out there that don't take care of their customers, don't care about their product or service as much as they should, and they're not the number one cheerleader for their business, which they should be as the business owner.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's a great example,
That's a
Steve.
great question, Kimberly. Thank you for that. Well, gosh, man, we thought we were starting in one direction today, but as most of our live streams tend to be, we just like, woo, we go off in
We go all
multiple
over the
directions.
place.
I love it. So, as we start to look to wind this down, we're going to definitely do more live streams. We have, if you're joining us a little bit late, we've been doing these. We did them all last year, talking about pushing yourself to learn something new. Asha has pushed me to want to push record. And we've come on the live stream, but we've had to learn some technology. We've got these things, kind of down where we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter under Periscope as well. It's been a great experience. We're going to do a lot more of these this year. We're going to bring on some guests. The podcast is continuing to grow. We really, really appreciate everyone for participating in that, sort of that growth over the last year. We're in what season now?
I want to say 4. Is that right?
That's probably right. I want to say 4. That sounded like I've been stuck with you for 4 freaking seasons, I think. Oh, Kimberly just put up a comment for you.
No.
Oh, where's that boss today? He's dead. I did not kill him. I will say that. Yeah, that's. I mean, I'm not to be flippant about it, but he actually caused himself a heart attack and actually ended up having to get out of business and lost his business over a really bad situation. But yeah, it's unfortunate. But I mean, dude, you had it coming. Sorry, no, I'm totally kidding. What about you? Oh wait, you locked up there. Sorry, that might have been on me.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm back.
Yeah. Back.
Okay. I'm back.
What were you saying before that?
No, I was just saying how unfortunate that is. You know what?
Yeah.
Because of the fact that, granted, we get so many like warning signs to change, and if you don't take it over and over and over again, that happen. It's an unfortunate thing.
Yep, absolutely. Well, so as we look to wind down this episode, we really do appreciate you, watching the video. If you're on the live stream, you're going to watch the replay on our YouTube channel or on Facebook. So thank you so much for joining us. Asha, tell everybody how they can find, if they're hearing the podcast, where they can find our video, and ultimately how they can get in contact with us if there's a topic or an area they'd like us to have a conversation about here in the future.
No, definitely, Steve. So you can reach us. You can reach us at conversationswithashaandsteve.com. You can reach us on Facebook. You can visit our YouTube channel. We're on Instagram. We're pretty much everywhere. People can reach out to us in any way. If you have any ideas of any topics or anything that you'd like for us to cover, or if you're interested in our coaching program as well, contact us, reach out to us on any of those ways. But Steve, how can people contact you
Yeah. So you can
directly?
find me on my website, ripplecentral.com. You can find me on most social platforms at Ripple On. What about yourself?
Perfect. You can visit my website at theprasadmethod.com, and I'm on most social media at the Prasad Method.
You know what? We probably I could have done this. See, this is the branding thing I was talking about. I could have remembered to do this. There you go. The
There you
Prasad
go.
Method. Hey, look, I'm my own producer. What do you want from me? I mean, this is the best we can do. But yeah, this is this is always fun to do these things with you. And there's our handles again.
Hey, there you go.
But by the time we do the next live stream, we will have our countdown timer and our music coincided.
Yes.
Who knows? We might show up early enough that we actually have a dance party before we start talking. I don't know.
I want to see that, Steve. That'll be good.
For you, it would be good. For me, it will just take people away. So anyway, greatly appreciate everybody joining us for the Conversations with Asha and Steve podcast and live stream. We will be back on with a new episode and a new stream very, very soon. Until then, Asha, take care.
You too, Steve. Thank you so much.
So good to see you.
Until next time. You too.